At Twende Solar, we believe that electricity empowers communities.
Electrons can make a lot of things go around. Once you get renewable energy in the mix, you can change the arc of a site's recovery.
Fighting the climate crisis starts locally. That is our tagline. That is our motto.
3 leaders, 3 different missions, 1 unified climate-focused Giving Tuesday. Hey everyone, welcome back to SunCast. Today's Giving Tuesday episode is special, as they all are. You're about to hear 3 short but powerful conversations with leaders working on very different, yet deeply connected parts of the clean energy and climate ecosystem. We're going to start with global energy access, then move to disaster-powered microgrids, and wrap with local climate action that you can take right away in your own city. If you want to support any of the organizations featured today, we've linked them all below, and you can also just head over to suncast.media and click on the Giving Tuesday banner. Let's get into it. Robin Swanheiser, welcome back to SunCast. It's great to see you.
Thanks. Great to see you too.
Twende works at the intersection of energy empowerment and community resilience. And I'd love to hear what's a moment for you from this past year, maybe a person, a project, or a story that really illustrates why this work matters for you.
You know, right now we are working on a project in Ghana for a community center in a really rural area where 600 people lack access to electricity within about a 5-mile walking distance to the nearest grid. And for me, getting to work with those community members on envisioning what would it look like for their community to have a hub of resilience and electricity access where community members could go to charge their cell phones. They could access basic healthcare with a health clinic, access to electricity for community parties and celebrations, and students to access a small library. Just getting to be part of that with the local community, envisioning what it is that they see a better future for their community and how electricity can be a part of that community development. So for me, that's been really impactful, and really excited to see that this project is coming to fruition and to be a part of that.
Is that work the kind of work that's emblematic from a regional or even a scale perspective of what you have built Twende out to as the executive director to achieve?
Absolutely. What we see is that, electricity access in hubs of community, whether it's a school or a community center, having access to electricity in those community infrastructure really gives access to a broader swath of the community. If we're able to provide a place where people can gather, electricity for students, schools become this hub. So for Twende Solar, that's where we focus our energies: is how can we electrify these community hubs and provide access to, the entire community. We're not focused on, housing electrification. While we agree that that is, a problem that we would hope to see as more people around the world get access to renewable energy. But our focus is really on these, community infrastructure.
What do you believe is the biggest misconception that people continue to have about energy access in underserved or these rural communities around the world?
There's a stat thrown around that 750 million people worldwide don't have access to electricity. And, that is a lot of people, but there's millions more who do have what we may say they're connected, right? They might have access to the grid. There might even be, electricity in their homes. But is that grid reliable? Are they getting consistent access? How often does it go out? And so for us, we are also looking at how can we make sure that, renewable energy or the communities where we're working, we're providing access to a reliable, sustainable, and consistent source that these communities can count on. Because if you're in a healthcare facility and the power is going out 14 hours every 2 days, how are you, able to ensure that you have appropriately refrigerated vaccines, or that people can get consistent care, or in those schools that they can provide regular school hours for those students. So I think there's a misconception that just because you're connected, quote unquote connected, that those communities may have reliable access.
Robin, you get a chance to see how this approach, bringing renewable energy, bringing local sort of distributed generation to these communities, can truly impact people, communities, lift folks out of poverty. I'd love to hear if there's a project, an approach or innovation perhaps that you've introduced that you think best represents Twende's impact or even the evolution of the entity?
We're really looking at ways that we can continue to be more sustainable, responsive to community needs, and also, responsive to the fact that the global landscape of renewable energy has changed and evolved over the last 10 years of Twende's existence. 10 years ago, you might not have been able to identify a local contractor in some of these really small remote areas where we're working. So being responsive to the changes in the industry and happily the growth of solar energy deployment around the world, and how can we, through partnerships with other local nonprofits that are working renewable energy space in those, domestic sectors, or working with local contractors to help ensure that that there is continuity and a plan for maintenance and sustainability of that system long after it's been installed and we're no longer working in that community. So we're working on all of those sort of interconnections to make sure that we're responsive to the community's needs.
Is there perhaps a comparison that you could provide for folks who maybe don't understand the work involved in deploying these kinds of resources into rural communities? Why you make the distinction of finding local contractors? Like how has it been done up to now, and how are you thinking about it differently now?
So, one of the ways that we have in the past thought about it is how can we use the resources within the renewable energy industry, at large in the United States. There's a lot of generosity that we receive from companies that are looking for different ways that they can invest in the industry and give back. But also looking at what is the best for those communities. If we have an inverter in the United States, for example, in our project in Ghana, we have lots of inverter companies in the United States that would like to support this project, but they don't make an inverter that's the right nominal voltage for the system in Ghana. So thinking about how can we leverage the support and the enthusiasm from within the industry to better support these projects that provides the community with what they need. And in this case, it might be that we have to source that inverter locally, because now that there's somebody locally who knows how to install that inverter, knows how to service it and provide long-term maintenance.
Well, you've gotten creative in a number of ways as executive director of a growing nonprofit. You have to think constantly about how do you engage folks and how do you raise capital to support your projects. One of the more creative ways I've seen in a long time came through a project that you guys are referring to as the Solar Puzzle. And I'd love to hear a bit more about the origin story of the puzzle concept, what it symbolizes, and practically speaking, how does it translate into folks supporting the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So one of our board of directors, around the holiday season, he always looks for a puzzle to do with his family. Last year, went out to the market thinking, I'm going to find a puzzle that features solar energy. And it turns out that it's very hard to find, and he found non-existent, that there are no sort of jigsaw puzzles on the market that feature solar energy. And there's this sort of typical Americana scene in a lot of sort of holiday puzzles of rolling hills and sort of rural American landscape. So he set out to figure out how he could fill that niche, and brought Twende Solar into it, saying, why don't we make a puzzle and we use a portion of the proceeds to support the mission of Twende Solar. So we partnered with a local artist named Kathleen Russell, who we commissioned to create the art. So it is a one-of-a-kind piece of artwork that she painted, and then it was printed by the Portland Puzzle Company, which happens to be one of 3 American puzzle printing presses in all of the United States, and it's right here in our backyard. So they are now available for sale. You can order your puzzle, and they will ship immediately. So really excited that that's a partnership that we're able to use as a way to continue to raise awareness about what we do, and also just that solar is a regular celebrated piece of American landscape that we had sort of woven into our DNA as rural or throughout the United States. So it's really beautiful to see that continue to celebrate both solar domestically, and then how that the funding from the sales of these puzzles can continue to expand electricity access for communities in need around the world.
I think it's a beautiful idea and a concept, and we've talked at length about it as you've been developing the project. I'd love to give folks a chance to check the puzzle project out as well as to help support the work that you're doing through Twende for Giving Tuesday specifically. If folks want to support Twende in the most practical, impactful way, what could they do today? Is it buying the puzzle? Is it donating or partnering? Is there some other way that they should connect with you?
I would point to three things. One is a donation to Twende Solar really is the most impactful way that you can support our work. A donation of $50 is enough to ensure that one student has access to electricity in their school for as long as that system is sustainable and operating. So, and that means that student and then the next student, right? It's after they've completed their education. So for us, that's the most impactful way that someone can support us by going to twendesolar.org and making a donation to help us with our end of year giving campaign. The second is obviously to buy a puzzle. If you go to twendesolar.org/puzzle, you can then you would find information about where you can purchase your puzzle and how to get it. So that's another really great way. If you need a tangible gift to give someone in your life, a fun renewable energy gift, we think it makes really great gift for friends, colleagues, clients in the industry. So that's sort of second. And the third is if you're interested in getting more involved in the work that we do, either as a volunteer or figuring out ways that you can get more involved, you can reach out to me either on LinkedIn or emailing hello@twendesolar.org. And that's the best way to reach us.
So one thing I always want to point out is that you spell Twende, Twende, and that's twendesolar.org. Please go support Twende and their mission. Robin Swanheiser is Executive Director of Twende Solar, an organization that we've been happily promoting and supporting through the years. I'm happy to also say that a lot of the organizations I'm involved in have been able to support the work that Twende is doing. As a fellow returned Peace Corps volunteer, I'm so thrilled to see the work that you guys are doing over at Twende. Robin, thank you for taking the time to join us, and I hope the folks will support your Giving Tuesday.
Thank you, Nico. Appreciate it.
Hey, Will, welcome back. Last time we talked, you had just returned home from responding to Hurricane Helene in Western North Carolina. Unfortunately, when we do get a chance to chat, it is often on the heels of some disaster, but I'm glad we can make time for you today. And once again, you're on the road since we've last seen each other in Las Vegas at RE Plus. You've been in response to disaster recovery in Jamaica. Could you share a moment from one of your recent deployments that really brought home the importance of renewable power disaster relief?
I think every disaster response is different. And for our mission, we're the kind of the renewable power solution game and disaster relief is our bread and butter. For Jamaica in particular, I was not in the first wave of our response to Melissa. That was actually Ray from our team. And so she has some incredible stories about getting on a cargo plane out of Miami and then spending hours on a tarmac in Kingston to move portable, so like little, we call them lunchbox sized solar generators, like 300 watt hour, tiny little cell phone battery charging Starlink systems. Nothing. These are small setups, and she put them on a helicopter that then was dropped all around the western side of the island, and that allowed first responders to get communications up to start coordinating search and rescue. And it's these unique stories. I often they're unique in every place, but they're also it's kind of like history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And oftentimes we're doing these small deployments that grow into larger microgrid deployments. And so now that's why I'm here, is to coordinate with some local installers to set up larger microgrids for, health facilities, water pumping stations, and other infrastructure scale recovery sites.
When you mention lunchbox size or generators, which are sort of footprint project speak for batteries that are supported by solar, how many milliamp hours, how many kilowatt hours are they deploying?
Yeah, so the smallest unit that we put on, we sent 150 of these small power packs, right? Like a Goal Zero, the things you see at REI. These ones are Schneider Electric. They're called off-grid battery units with a folding 100-watt array. So it's like a briefcase size solar panel and a lunchbox size battery, and it's a 300 watt hour battery. If you're on the top of a mountain and you need to run a Starlink, that thing is game changing for radios, Wi-Fi, and basic lighting. Doesn't do much more than that, but if all you're trying to do is call an ambulance, it is life-saving.
For those who are watching perhaps on YouTube or LinkedIn, this is the Goal Zero 100. This is the Sherpa 100 AC. It's the largest you can take on your carry-on in an airport. So, or a commercial airline, for example. So about 3 of these is what we're talking about, stacked on each other. It's about the size of the lunchbox that I believe you're talking about, right, Will?
Exactly. Yep. The Schneider off-grid 300 watt hour, you can't put it on a plane. So we did pack 150 of them on 3 pallets that left out of Miami 2 days after the storm. As soon as the airfield was open, we were able to get them in.
So this is what Will is referring to exactly or precisely.
Exactly.
Thank you, Schneider, for creating a product like this. I'm curious, is this the kind of thing like, is Schneider or someone else donating these? Talk to me about how these kinds of resources get into the hands of Footprint Project.
Schneider Electric is one of our biggest corporate sponsors. They donate cash, volunteer time, and in-kind product, which is, in this case, these off-grids. They've donated hundreds of these after the LA wildfire in particular, now for Melissa here in Jamaica, and they also started donating. They actually started staging this equipment with us ahead of storms last year, and the first deployment was in Asheville after Hurricane Helene. This is huge with us, and I should also call out a couple other corporate sponsor names. EcoFlow has provided us with product in kind for this. Blue Eddy has provided product in kind ahead of storms, and New Use Energy as well, and they all allow us to, like, if we can get it ahead of the storm, then that's how we get it in really fast. So the in-kind product donations ahead of storms allows us to do this work really effectively. When we get product donations after a storm, it's always a scramble. We usually can figure it out, but it's not going to get there, it's not going to get that like radio on the top of a mountain for a firefighter that needs a radio on. It's just having it pre-staged is the name of the game.
For listeners who maybe are new to Footprint, how do you describe what you do? What's the concise sort of one-sentence version of the problem that you solve and who you're serving?
So we're a 501c3 nonprofit disaster service organization. Our mission is to help communities build back greener after disasters by mobilizing cleaner energy infrastructure to crises. So that generally looks like deploying portable and mobile solar energy solutions from a suitcase size up to a shipping container size that can power immediate response and relief efforts, and then transitioning that equipment over to support long-term recovery and rebuilds. We are starting to engage in, like, right now we did a site assessment today, and a local installer in Jamaica is setting up a palletized Tesla battery microgrid system to power a water station. Energy is our cornerstone, but what we know with energy is that, like, once you get the lights on and once you can power, electrons can make a lot of things go wrong, right? They can make water pumps, they can make medical devices work, they can make communications equipment work, they can make air conditioners work. So if you have power, all of a sudden a lot of things fall into place. And so we've noticed we're becoming more of a holistic climate technology or infrastructure aid organization as we grow, because once you get renewable energy in the mix, you can change the arc of a site's recovery, meaning you can bring water, you can bring shelter, you can bring clean, refrigeration and cooling, people can store medicine. So it's really a cornerstone technology that I think is really, really exciting for the disaster industry, but also for the folks on this call. Like, the solar industry has a lot of tools, new tools in the toolkit that the solar industry can provide for humanitarian aid.
I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around aid work, disaster relief, and you have to as much educate the folks on the ground as the donors who are trying to do right and support. What do you find is maybe the biggest misconception people still have about energy with regards to disaster relief? What do they actually think happens versus what really happens on the ground?
If you're a first responder or an NGO coming in, people often think that solar is harder than it is. So like for the users, for the end users, I think there's a technology or learning curve gap where people think like, this is going to be much more complicated, or I think the aid or first response community is very traditionalist, meaning like we like what works, right? We love our generators, our gas generators, because we're used to them. We know them. We know how to pull a cord and hear that thing fire up, right? And so seeing something,
we know how to refuel it.
Yep. We got our plan and we like our plan. And so having a new tool in the toolkit, oftentimes people are like, oh, I'll learn that later, right? And it's actually much easier to learn in the field than I think than a lot of people think. And so I'd start there. And then for the donors or the industry sponsors, like I think the other misconception is that we can teleport equipment, stuff, or knowledge. Like nothing, right? Like we think that we move as fast as we can, and I think we're getting progressively better at battery logistics, and it's every disaster we get better. It's very much like a sport that if you like practice it, you get better, or like your 10,000 hours type of game. But at the end of the day, a donation of equipment in Phoenix, Arizona, for example, you can only move it so fast through customs in an international disaster. And there's just only what I think the responders think it's harder to do, and often the donors or sponsors think it's easier to do than it is.
So over the last year, you've responded to a number of different types and scales of disaster. You mentioned LA, obviously you're in Jamaica now. Is there anything that really made you think, okay, this is actually kind of the future of disaster resilience? We've tapped into something here that was better than I expected. Maybe it was a partnership or deployment method, but is there something that you could put your finger on that felt like a meaningful breakthrough?
For us, the biggest breakthrough for Footprint Project this year, I think, is actually our long-term recovery program happening in Western North Carolina. We were able to, in many ways, because of support from partners on your podcast, right? I remember talking to y'all last fall, and friends in North Carolina that really were like, we see this, we need more of this, we need to deepen this work regionally in the Appalachia region and in North Carolina specifically after Hurricane Helene. We actually just are rolling out in the last couple months here a state-funded mobile microgrid recovery grant through North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality and Land of Sky Regional Council of Governments. That is actually the first time I've seen state actors and like we're starting to see public dollars get behind this type of a new paradigm, if you will, of disaster relief and resilience work that specifically calls out the intersection between renewable energy and disaster response. And I'm not just disaster preparedness, because you see a lot of money going into microgrids on critical infrastructure or community resilience hubs ahead of storms. But I think the tipping point in North Carolina for us is really, really unique because it's reflective of a response effort that we rallied and performed in the fall that translated to a recovery grant that incorporates mobile microgrids for future disasters in the state of North Carolina. And that is the first time we've ever seen our work kind of like cross the arc of rapid response into long-term recovery, into, hey, let's build more mobile microgrids ahead of a future storm in North Carolina. So I just want to shout out all the North Carolina folks that made that work possible and are continuing to make that work possible, because we see a lot of disasters are a flash. It's like a startup valley of death problem, right? People like there's a lot of money a lot of money when the media is focusing on it. We get some stuff done and then it kind of falls off, right? We have to like kind of not shudder, but we have to really, we can't deepen the work. We can't hire locals teams. We can't put a warehouse in place in that region. And North Carolina was like, this is work that we need to if we're looking out over the long arc of climate change, we're going to need more of this in our state through 2050, and let's invest. And it's huge. It's huge for the state, and it's a model for the country.
It's a wonderful example. And what you just described as well is something I've heard you refer to as the disaster financing duck curve, so to speak, where funding does tend to surge when the cameras are on, but it tends to drop off and people sort of move on with their lives before you could really build capacity for the next impending disaster. Before I let you go, I'd love for you to talk about what kind of support would actually help bend that curve toward preparedness.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned it already, but I'll just call it out again. Pre-staged equipment, resources, turnkey systems that we can get in really fast after a storm go light years for like solving immediate response problems that then set us up for success in financing or funding larger microgrid deployments in that early recovery phase where you need an installer, you need cash to pay that installer to go out and set up this, mobile microgrid at, a field of panels outside of a fire station. So I just call out like pre-staging resources, both in kind and cash. That could take various forms. It can be public dollars, it can be corporate sponsor dollars, it can be individual support and in-kind donations. But I think at the end of the day, like in the spirit of Giving Tuesday, like I must say, for the domestic US, and I'm going to knock on wood here, this was a very quiet hurricane season. Like if you think about hurricane seasons in the past,
yes,
it's like I am still just blown away that Jamaica and Hurricane Melissa is the only thing that has happened this fall. It's mind-blowing.
And it was supposed to be like a really heavy
well, if
hurricane
you look at the
season.
hurricane arc, it was really heavy and terrifying, but they all spun out into the North Atlantic. They all turned right before they hit shore. It was a very active hurricane season. They just, none of those Cat 5 hurricanes hit Florida or North Carolina or Louisiana, where, I'm from, or I live. Like, we got really lucky, and I'm fingers crossed we stay lucky this year. It's a late hurricane season, so we're still we're not taking our eye off the ball. But like, just if we did get lucky, that means we have we got to prepare for the next year, because it's going to be here in 6 months, and that 6 months goes like that.
Well, Will, to that end, I'm sure that a lot of folks still want to find ways to support. You are, I'd say you and Footprint are one of the more well-referenced when folks tell me like, oh, I really appreciated that episode. I know that listeners are eager to continue to support alongside you. What is the best way on this Giving Tuesday for folks who want to create the most impact to come alongside you? Is it financial support? Is it sponsoring kits? Is it some sort of a corporate partnership? Something else? All
of the above, absolutely. Like I think about our giving strategy is like create as wide of a funnel, as many buckets as possible, and let the if you're inspired to give cash as an individual, website has a donation button. If you're interested in a long-term corporate partnership, please reach out to give@footprintproject.org. That's for larger gifts and like kind of sponsor partnerships where we're like, how many kits are we building as volunteer, rally, and like, how are we doing giving days, volunteer days? We're in all of the above. If you have extra panels that are functional and above 300 watts, we'd love to talk. If you have turnkey or functional, battery units, those are always gold in a disaster. So please, just however you want to get in touch, however you want to get invested or join the effort, it is a all hands on deck. And I'd also just say, if your version of giving is like going to your local fire station and asking them like, what's your plan for a blackout?
Yeah.
I will count that as volunteer hours. Like, do it. let us know, because that is local advocacy and local resilience planning. And that is just as much of an investment in this work as like I threw $100 on the website, right? Like that. And that's really what's going to move. Like, that's the world we need to live in, is when people are like showing up at their fire station and figuring out
Yeah.
how to keep that place on when the grid goes down.
And if you do take that action, please let us know. I'd like to know. Will would love to know, so we can help capture the sentiment of how creating this kind of education moves the needle as well. Again, Will mentioned footprintproject.org. I want to give a quick shout out to our mutual friend, Daniel Deuce, who now for the second year, we've been able to include Footprint Project in the money that we've raised at our Solar Fight Night as well. We've been able to sort of infect folks, as it were, like Yuri Horowitz at Soul Systems and others who've come alongside and supported Footprint as corporate partners. I hope that you enjoy the stories that you hear, but also that you appreciate the incredible work that Will and his team are doing in remote places to help expand all of our vision that, like you've heard already in today's stories, solar is for all, and never more so prescient and pressing than when the lights go out because of a disaster. Will, thank you and your team for all that you do to help ensure that there's hope in the middle of the disaster recovery in places like Western North Carolina and Jamaica and LA and Hawaii.
Thank you for elevating these stories, Nico. It's we don't do it without you and the network. It's a team effort, right?
It is.
We're really honored to be a part of this and kind of provide a channel for light during these moments of need. So thanks for having us.
All right, welcome Jack Hansen from Run on Climate to the show. It's great to see you, sir.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Jack, you've been engaged in climate activism since you were young. You served on Burlington City Council at the ripe old age of 24. I'm curious, what's a moment from your climate activism experience, or maybe even earlier, all the way to your roots in Evanston, that made you realize local climate leadership actually moves the needle?
It's maybe a little more than a moment, so I'm maybe cheating a little, but just being part of a movement in Burlington where we got a bunch of people engaged in local politics who hadn't been engaged, bunch of young people, a bunch of renters, a lot of people who, immigrants, other folks who weren't traditionally involved in local politics. And we were able to bring a lot of people into the fold. We were able to elect myself and some other folks into office and really work on and pass some pretty exciting policies and kind of view that whole transition from, going door to door, talking about these policies to actually passing and implementing them. And if I had to pick one that I'm most proud of, it's that we passed mandatory rental weatherization, meaning that landlords have to meet energy efficiency requirements, which is a really big deal in a place like Burlington where you have a lot of super drafty, super old apartments where folks are spending hundreds of dollars a month in the winter on natural gas heating. And this is a way to save them money and cut pollution at the same time. So that was probably the most exciting one that I was proud to be a part of and help pass.
For listeners, Jack, who are unfamiliar with Run on Climate, perhaps some of them have heard that you were a beneficiary for the Solar Fight Night funds, but maybe are still unclear. What's the simplest, maybe one-sentence version of the mission, the problem that you're solving, and who you are serving?
The mission is to pass cutting-edge climate policies and programs in cities across the country. Fighting the climate crisis starts locally. That is our tagline. That is our motto. It kind of goes back to the whole think global, act local, right? It's the same exact idea as that, and just applying it to climate change. But I think that is somewhat novel. I think a lot of people feel like the climate crisis is an international issue or a national issue or maybe a state issue, but not everyone sees it as, oh, this is something my city council, my local government can address. A lot of people think it's that's not going to be the solution. But in reality, we need every local government in the world to step up and address this problem. And fortunately, local governments can do a lot to cut pollution. They have a lot of control. So the beauty of this is we don't need to wait on the federal government.
What is a simple, easy step that you often give folks for how they can take meaningful local climate action?
There's a number of things. One is get involved in a campaign. Help someone who's a strong climate advocate. Help them get elected into office. And so we work on campaigns as well and trying to get these climate advocates into office. So we encourage folks to either run for office or volunteer on a campaign or support someone, vote in local elections. I mean, that in itself, so few people vote in local elections that we had 2 races this year one was decided by 6 votes, another was decided by 11 votes. So even just simply voting in local elections goes a really long way because local voter turnout is so low that your vote carries a lot of weight and you can flip races. So that's one piece. And then I think the other big piece is just paying attention to what's going on in your local government. So going to a city council meeting or just reaching out to your city councilor, and you'd be surprised how easy it is. If you reached out to your city councilor and said, hey, I want to talk to you about what's going on with climate action in our city, they'll probably sit down and have a meeting with you. And even if you're intimidated by that, you can approach it as just asking them questions. Hey, what's happening in the city? How can I get involved? I care about climate action. I'm your constituent. They're gonna, most likely, they're gonna respond. They're gonna engage.
What are some actions that you see jurisdictions taking that really only can happen locally? It's not something that Washington or somewhere or at a state house can drive.
I'll tell you this from being a city councilor, like, you have to be responsive. If you're not responsive to people, you're probably not going to get reelected. So it is their job to be responsive to you. And if you reach out, they probably will engage. They're going to want to look good. They're going to want to brag about what's going on, or they're going to want to have something to tell you about what's going on climate. So it's a really easy way to get your foot in the door, learn what's going on, and then you can assess how you feel about it and how you want to engage with it and get involved from there. But I think that's a good starting point. And then your next question really segues super well into the more concrete next steps, which is, first of all, we're here to help you. So if you reach out to us, we'll meet with you, we'll strategize with you, we'll give you guidance on how to do all this. So you're not alone. It's free. We want to help you. So reach out to us anytime. The second piece is on our website, we actually have a list of about 40 to 50 local climate policies that cities can do that are effective, that reduce emissions. Most of these policies they're not partisan. These are things that benefit the community. They save people money and they cut pollution. So in theory, these are policies that a lot of communities should want to move forward on. And we do see communities of different stripes moving forward on a number of them. So I'll give you one example because this is one that's easy to overlook, but it actually does matter. So there's something called minimum parking requirements, where when any new building is built, a lot of cities have these minimum parking requirements that say you have to build, 2 parking spaces per housing unit, or 3 parking spaces per lane of a bowling alley. Like, it gets that weird. It gets that granular, where the city's forcing these developers to build these huge parking lots that they actually don't need or don't want to build. And guess what? That drives up the cost of everything because it's very expensive to build this parking, and they're going to pass those costs through to the end user. So you're paying for that in your rent or your housing costs, or the fees associated with whatever you're buying. So this is something that cities can simply eliminate that policy or even put in parking maximums so that new construction is built in a way where it's not a huge parking lot, and it's not going to cost way more, but also, A, they're going to save money, but B, it's not going to encourage people to drive. It's going to encourage people to think about other ways to get to that destination, and maybe they'll walk or take bike or take public transit to get there. So that's just one that I think every community should do. That's really a no-brainer. And we've seen over 100 cities that have done this in the last few years.
I'm looking at the list as you talk, by the way, Jack, because I hadn't spent a whole lot of time on your website yet. And two that stand out to me are a climate bureaucracy, right? Helping your city create climate action plans. Well, three that stand out. Building performance standards, which I'm familiar with. We actually did a whole episode on building performance standards and net zero buildings that people should go listen to.
Great.
And tree protection ordinance, one that's near and dear to my wife's heart. Those are three simple examples that, if you think about, like, I don't really know what to engage. I'm answering my own question here through this conversation with Jack. Like, what are three things I would want to talk about with because you can't really pick more than that. But if I want to sit down with a counselor and say, all right, what's a climate action plan? Do you have one? Have you ever thought about it? Has anybody talked about it at a city council meeting? Great. Nobody's talked about it. Allow me to be the first. And I can give you an example because my friends that run on climate have templates for all this stuff. Number two, by the way, we at Durham, like in the city of Durham, there's a massive sort of choke point in construction where everybody agrees we need more housing. We need affordable housing. This is by no means limited to Durham. It was the same when I lived in Oakland. And yet we see these buildings going up, and I was raised in construction my whole life. Like, these buildings are going up, and I can tell you there's no building performance standard they're being held to. Like, I can see it from the outside watching how they're being built. Like, they're meeting the minimum sort of construction standard, but there's no approach to building these as though they're going to last 50 years and as though they need to help us reduce our overall carbon footprint on the planet. But then the last one, I watch so much infill in our city where places that my children once played are now apartment buildings, right? Where old growth lots have been cut down. And so is there any sort of tree protection even inside of developments? Those are three simple examples. It gets much more comprehensive. EV rate charging infrastructure and rebates. Like, I think that's a really big one for cities that many cities are trying to think about, but they don't have resources internally to figure out how to approach it. And so it becomes one of those things that gets shelved, right, Jack?
Yeah, so many. First of all, I'm glad you're looking at our resources, and I encourage anyone to go to our website, runonclimate.org, and take a look at these. It's going to give you ideas of simple, easy things that you can ask your city councilor if your city's done these, and if not, why not, and how can you help? And a lot of them are just such no-brainers. And I think the big thing I want to say, like, off of everything that you said, is these are all things that can be done through local government. Like, these are not federal or state policies. The city controls what gets built, where, how, when, block by block. The city has that legal authority. So it's huge, and you got to take advantage of it.
How easy or difficult is a ballot initiative, Jack?
Ballot initiatives are, those are a bigger undertaking for sure. It's a lot of bureaucracy to get through to even get an item on the ballot, typically in most cities. And then you got to do a lot of public education and awareness and outreach to try to win whatever item you're fighting for. And there might be folks on the other side spending money against you. So they can be big, but if it's truly a no-brainer, sometimes you can fly a little bit under the radar and get stuff passed easily.
I asked because I was just sort of clicking through the website, and one of the things that you provide resources around are ballot initiatives, linked to ballot.org on what are ballot measures. I find that, to my surprise and dismay, a lot of folks I have conversations with, they are self-aware that they are undereducated from a civic engagement perspective.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I find so fascinating about the work that you're doing on Run on Climate, because, we've got others even in today's Giving Tuesday episode where folks are passionate about bringing solar to rural communities and developing nations. Will, who you met, is passionate about helping provide emergency relief in disaster scenarios with renewables. And Jack and Run on Climate, and now I really understand why Daniel Deuce, our friend, is so passionate about what you do. He is a self-professed single-ticket voter, right? Single-issue voter. Not single-ticket, but single-issue voter. He votes on climate and nothing else. And so for folks like Daniel who want to see that more is being done at a local level, like in Vermont, like in Durham, there are very few organizations, none that I could put my finger on, that do quite what you do at Run on Climate.
And again, like, we will do a lot of this research for you, because I know it can be daunting to understand the inner workings of your city government, and every city's different and has its nuances and complexities, but we're here to help. If you reach out to me and say, hey, what's up with our city councilor, what have we done? We'll do the background research and hand it back to you. So we are here to help. We want to hold your hand through the process.
And I will say that Jack's team and the interns that work for him as well are superb, super responsive. It's a small but mighty team in my experience.
Absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to know is kind of what does it look like on the ground, Jack? When a local official or community advocate taps into the network you've created and suddenly has the toolkit or the courage even to push for a bold policy.
First of all, we are specifically targeting people in local government who really want to do a lot on climate. That's the audience we're working with. And it's all about, so it's not us trying to convince them of these things. It's really us trying to help them be effective, help them get it done, because that and alone takes a lot of work. So our role isn't really how do we, convince folks it's worthwhile. Our role is you have someone it's worthwhile. How do we help them be effective and make things happen in their community, in their city? So this local climate policy network that we've built is a group of local elected officials who want to do more on climate. Many of them have already done a ton, but they want to do even more. And the beauty of this network is we're giving them free support and helping them with this. But a lot of it is them helping each other, this peer-to-peer support. We're bringing them together into community, into network. So anytime that one of them wants to work on something, we can connect them with someone else who maybe just passed that exact policy last year. And maybe it took them 2 years to pass it and they learned a lot along the way. And a 30-minute phone call can maybe save that other person 100 hours, because they can download the lessons learned over 2 years from another city. This is something that, in theory, it's like everyone would be doing this, right? But in practice, like when you're a local elected official, you don't have any time to kind of lift your head up and see what's going on in other cities. But if Run on Climate's there to plug you in and make the introduction and make it easy and say, this is the person to talk to in this city, here's their email, I'm going to set you guys up on a call, then, they will do it and it will save them a ton of time in the end.
Jack, I'm really grateful for the vision that you've had for how to provide this network of support. For this Giving Tuesday, if someone is only just now learning about Run on Climate, they're listening to this and they want to support the work that you're doing, what's the most impactful way that they can do that?
Yeah, so we've partnered for Giving Tuesday with Earth Gives, which is a great nonprofit that their whole thing is, look, only 2% of giving globally goes to environmental causes. In this time of, ecological crisis and climate crisis and ecological collapse, it needs to be a whole hell of a lot more than that. And so that's their mission. And that's environment in general. Climate is less than 1%. 2% is any environmental issue. So anyways, so what they try to do is they try to highlight and promote groups like us around the country who are doing environmental work and get folks connected. So if you go to earthgives.org and you look up Run on Climate, you'll see our landing page through their website and their platform. And that's really where we're doing our Giving Tuesday push. And they do a lot of cool events and prizes and, guest speakers and education throughout, leading up to and during Giving Tuesday. So they're a great partner. We're excited to be working with them. And I encourage you all to check out Earth Gives and find us on there. But also, you can always go to runonclimate.org, and runonclimate.org is also an easy way to support us as well.
And are you going to have a link on the homepage for the Earth Gives Giving Tuesday campaign on Giving Tuesday?
Yeah, we'll get a banner up there to make it nice and easy and visible, definitely.
Okay, fantastic. So as I've said for others, and we'll do at the end of this Giving Tuesday episode, if you go to suncast.media, we will have links as well. If for some reason you're on a run or doing your dishes or whatever else is distracting you, all you got to remember is you can click through the links in the description of and the show notes for this episode, and we'll make sure that you are able to connect your good intentions and your hard-earned dollars to these mission-aligned folks. Jack, thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing through Run on Climate. And thank you as well, not just for your commitment to local governance, but for your commitment to the planet through your carbon footprint commitments, not flying and keeping things local as you do. I'm inspired by the actions that I see you taking, the integrity that you have for the organization that you're running.
Thank you so much, Nico. It's an honor to be on this podcast and really appreciate all the work you all do and the opportunity to share it with more people. And we couldn't do any of this without thousands of grassroots donors supporting us. So anyone who's hearing this, you want to see this work continue, it is as simple as just supporting us at whatever level you can, and we'll just keep going, and we'll put those dollars to work. So thank you so much to anyone who wants to get involved or support in any way.
All right. Thank you. Jack Hansen's our Executive Director for Run on Climate, helping you take bold, local climate action. If you made it this far, thank you. These 3 organizations are doing real work on the ground, and your support today can make a meaningful difference. All the Giving Tuesday links are in the description, or you could head to suncast.media to find everything in one place. If you found this episode valuable, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone else that you know cares about climate, clean energy, and community resilience. I so appreciate you, and I'll see you right here on the next SunCast.